Working on this 2010 Lexus RX350, going to show you how to replace both of the front CV axles. Since we will be jacking up the front end, go ahead and block one of your rear wheels here. So I'll go ahead and start out on the driver's CV axle first. So I'm going to go ahead and jack it up right underneath the pinch weld here. And then if you look on this plastic piece, not sure if you guys can pick that up on the camera, but there's an arrow, and that's where they want you to jack it up. I'm going to go a little bit to the right of that arrow. That way I can get a jack stand under there. Then you can grab your jack stand. Go ahead and go right underneath the pinch weld there. I'll slowly lower this. And then I'll leave my jack here as well for extra protection. Grab a 21 millimeter, go ahead and remove our lug nuts, and then we can take our wheel and tire off. So with that wheel and tire out of the way, let's go ahead and remove our axle nut right here. Now that's going to be a 30 millimeter 12 point, and all I have is a shallow point socket, so it's not going to fit on there because of the axle in the way. So I do have a 32 millimeter 12 point, and that should work as well to get this off. So we'll go ahead and try that. I'm going to use my impact. If you guys don't have an impact, what you can use is have somebody go inside the vehicle there, press on the brake so this doesn't turn on you, and then you can loosen that with a breaker bar or socket wrench, whatever you want to use. So let's go ahead and see if this 32 millimeter will work. So just like that. And then just see if your axle is free. You can see this one's free. If yours isn't moving like that, you can take a rubber mallet, just kind of hit on that, see if you can free that up a little bit if it's seized in there. Next, we'll go ahead and undo our upper sway bar link nut here from the strut. That's going to be a 17 millimeter, and most likely this is going to turn on you when you go to loosen this. So if you get a 6 millimeter Allen to fit into here, that'll prevent that from turning. So let's see if we can loosen this up. So go ahead and take this off. And if you guys notice, this does have brand new struts on that. I did do a separate video on this for the front struts and then also the rear shocks. So if you're interested in that video, go ahead and check that out. But go ahead and spin this off the rest of the way here. Go ahead and take that nut off. And as you can see, we cannot pop the sway bar link out of here yet. We need to jack up on the lower control arm just to get that even, and then that'll come out of there. So I'm just going to use my smaller jack right underneath the control arm here. That'll lift that up so we can get that sway bar link out of there. And then as you're jacking that up, just keep an eye out on your sway bar link here. So you can see it moving there. So get it about right there. And you can just slide that out. And then we can go ahead and lower this jack. Next, I'm going to go ahead and undo the outer tie rod here on the steering knuckle. So you may have a cotter key here. So I'm just going to untwist that. And then you can pull that out. Grab a pair of pliers. Grab a 17 millimeter. We'll go ahead and remove that castle nut. Next, we need to separate the tie rod end from the steering knuckle here. So I'm just going to use a little mini sledge here, hit right on the steering knuckle. That vibration should pop that out of there. But while I'm doing that, I'm going to lift up on the tie rod as well. So just like that. And then come back down to the lower control arm here. We're going to remove the, there's two nuts and then a bolt that's holding our ball joint assembly onto this control arm. This is probably going to be the easiest method instead of trying to separate it from the steering knuckle. So 17 millimeter, go ahead and remove these two nuts and then also this bolt here. And you can see when you do that, it does kind of tilt in. That's just because this bolt that's up here kind of holds it downward. So then what you can do is take a pry bar. Let's just try and separate the lower control arm from the ball joint here. So you can see that kind of moving there. If I take a larger pry bar, just watch your fingers when you're doing this too. So get it about right there. I'm gonna push down with my hands here and try to take this whole steering knuckle with the strut outward. So just like that. Get your ball joint down here, kind of like that. So with that ball joint separated from the control arm, now what we can do, make sure your axle kind of pushes through here. You can kind of turn this and then try and pop your axle out of here. Just like that. And then you can just kind of turn this out of the way. Just make sure you're not putting a bunch of stress on your lines here. So kind of like that. So now what we need to do is we need to separate the CV axle out of the transmission there. So if I zoom in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get underneath the vehicle here, go through this gap with a pry bar, and then we'll pry against the transmission, and we'll try and pop this CV axle out, because there is a little snap ring on the end of the CV axle, so it kind of snaps into the transmission. So you need to pop it just enough to take the pressure off that C-clip, and your axle will come out. Okay, so trying to get you guys the best angle here, but you can see the CV axle right here. So if I try and pull on it a little bit, you can see got a little bit of a gap there, but you want to pry more on the CV axle and not right at the transmission, because you don't want to damage that seal that's in there. So if you can get on it, it's about right here with your pry bar, and then see, just kind of pop out of there, just like that. And then you can go ahead and fully remove the axle now. Just kind of lift up here and slide that out of there. Just like that. And this is that little snap ring I was talking about that you got to kind of, that's why you got to use a little force to pop that out of there, because of this little C-clip snap ring thing. And as you guys saw, I didn't need a drip pan because no transmission fluid came out of there when I popped it out either. So let's take a look at our new CV axle here. So I got this one off Amazon. This is the Cardone, part number 66-5308. I'll put a link in the description for this. And this is a 100% new one. It's not a rebuilt one. But as you can see, it looks pretty similar to the old one there. Only difference is the stock OEM one does have this almost like a rubber counterweight on it, whereas the new one does not. It does come with a new C-clip there. Snap ring to snap it into the transmission, and then it also includes a new axle nut as well. So we'll go ahead and stick this on. But what I like to do, I like to lube up the splines over here just with a little ATF. I just like to pour a little ATF onto that, just so that's not going in there dry. And then I also like to put a little dielectric grease just right here, because this is where it rides on that output shaft seal. So just so it doesn't create a bunch of friction, I like to just use a little tiny coat of this dielectric grease right on there. And then I also like to just take a little bearing grease here, and I'll put that on the splines up here where it goes through the axle hub there. Just a little bit on there, and now we should be ready to install. So grab your new axle here. Let's go ahead and get that kind of set up here. You want to make sure you go in there into the transmission straight. Make sure you don't get any dirt on those splines or anything. So just kind of get it set in there. You may need to turn it, because what we need to do is get that snap ring to snap in there. So just kind of get it like that. And then another thing you can do is come down below here just to kind of watch it and see what we need to do to get that to go in there all the way. So if you need to pull it out again, you can. A lot of times that snap ring is going to get kind of snagged, so you need a little force to pop that in there. So I'll show you how to do that. So if you notice you're having a little trouble getting that snapped in there, what you can do is just take a little rubber mallet. We'll get this kind of set up here evenly, so kind of like that, and then just kind of tap on this, and that should pop it into place there. So just like that, you can see the CV axle popped in there. Then if you take a look back down under here, you can see we're fully up against the transmission. So it's in there and we're good. So then you go ahead and take off your axle nut here. Now the passenger side will be a little bit different. So it will not have that snap ring on the end of the splines there. That side is just held in by a metal snap ring clip that's kind of by the carrier bearing, which you'll see once I do the other side. So the passenger side is going to be a little bit different than this side. So now let's see if we can get our splines through the axle bearing hub. So just kind of pull out on this again. And then you may need to turn it like that. And then just kind of lift up on this however you need to get that CV axle through. So we're kind of through there. And if for some reason it's not going all the way through, this lower control arm might be getting in the way. So if you just bend that down a little bit, and then you can slide your axle the rest of the way through. Then I like to just take the new axle nut here, go ahead and just kind of get that started on there, just to prevent that axle from coming out of there. So next we'll go ahead and get our ball joint assembly back into the lower control arm there. So you just have to press down. As you're pressing down, pull this outward. Bring it up above. Get it in there just like that. Grab your two nuts here, get those started. And then you may need to press down on the ball joint assembly right here to get this bolt started. Just like that. Grab your 17mm, go ahead and get those snug. Grab your torque wrench, you're going to torque these to 94 foot-pounds. Okay, now we can go ahead and get our outer tie rod back in to the steering knuckle here. Let's get that down in there. 17mm bolt here. Go ahead and get that snug. And then you're going to torque that to 50 foot-pounds. Okay, and then you want to make sure that your hole for your cotter pin can fit through there. If it doesn't, you want to just tighten that a little more. You never want to loosen that to get that hole to line up. So you can see it goes through there. Bend one of those down. Grab your little jack here. We'll go ahead and jack up the control arm again. That way we can get our sway bar link back through the strut. Go ahead and get this ready. Need to go up a little more. So right there. Grab your 17mm nut. Get that started. It'll most likely turn on you again. So grab your 6mm Allen and then your wrench. Go ahead and get that snug. And then once you get that snug, if you want to torque this, you can. It's going to be 55 foot-pounds. I'm just going to do it by hand. Get it nice and snug here. And now I did order some new sway bar links for this car as well. Just waiting on the Amazon guy to deliver them in a couple days. So I'll be doing a separate video on that if you guys are interested. Then you go ahead and get your jack out of here. So now we can go ahead and torque the axle nut here. And I ended up finding my 30mm 12 point. We're going to torque that to 217 foot-pounds, so quite a bit. And I believe that this probably won't turn on you because we don't have the other side jacked up. But if it does start turning on you, have somebody hold the brake again for you. So go ahead and torque that to 217 foot-pounds. Next, what you're going to want to do is take a punch or a chisel, and we're going to punch right here on the axle nut into that little bit of a groove right there. That'll prevent this axle nut from coming loose. So just kind of, I just like to go in the middle there. Go ahead and hit on that. So like I said, you're just kind of making a little bit of an indentation in that axle nut. So just something kind of like that. Next, I'm just going to grab some brake cleaner here. I'm going to spray the rotor because you can see I got some of my greasy fingerprints on the brake rotor here. So I'll just spray some of this just to make sure that's clean. Next, we can go ahead and get our wheel and tire put back on. Go ahead and jack this up. We'll get our jack stand out of there and lower it. Grab your torque wrench, torque your lug nuts to 76 foot-pounds. Okay, so now with the driver's side done, let's go ahead and move on to the passenger side. And that's going to be the same exact procedure. I'm not going to record all that, so I'll get it down to where we're about ready to remove the CV axle, and then I'll come back and show you guys how to do that. Okay, so over here on the passenger side, you can see I took everything apart just the same way as I did on the driver's side here. But if you notice, this one is going to be a little bit different here. So if I take my light here and see if I can zoom in here. So if you notice right in here, there's that little clip, so you can see it sticking up right there and another one right there. So what we need to do is squeeze in on that clip and then bring it forward just a little bit. Trying to get you guys the best light here, but you can see the rusted clip there. So what we need to do is get it out of that groove on that black bracket right there. So let's go ahead and do that next. So you can use a pair of needle nose or something. You can go down below here if it's any easier, or you can go through the side like I'm going to do. I got a long pair of needle nose pliers here, and I'm going to see if I can just get on that clip and squeeze. So see if you can squeeze that and then kind of pull towards you. You can see now it is undone from that groove right inside there. So we can just leave it like that now that it's disconnected there. Next, you'll come underneath here where we undid that clip. You're going to have a 14mm bolt right there. Let's go ahead and remove that. Just pull that off. So since there's nowhere to really pry on the transmission side of this CV axle. I'm going to go right up against this spot here. Looks like that bearing is kind of rusted in there, so not sure how well this is going to go. I'll try and pry it out with my pry bar. If not, we may need to take a hammer and a chisel and try to break that free, since it's pretty rusty. But let me try my pry bar first. So we'll get like back in here and just see if we can maybe get back behind here. Yeah, this just does not want to come out. Doesn't want to pop out of there. Like I said, I think it's because that bearing is rusted in there. So yeah, that ain't gonna work. So looks like we need to hit on this with a hammer and try and pop that bearing out of there. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is take a chisel and I'm gonna hit right on the CV axle right in here to see if I can knock that loose. Hopefully punch that out where the bearing's all rusted up in there. So let me go ahead and do that. All right, guys, so as you can see, I got a mess here. I've been working on this for the past 30-45 minutes, just trying to get this bearing out of this bracket here so we can slide the CV axle out. That thing is just seized in there so bad with rust and everything else that it's barely moving, but I think I'm getting a little bit now to where hopefully I can hit it out the rest of the way and show you guys. So I tried a bunch of different things. I didn't record it all just because I was trying anything I could to get this to move a little bit. And I tried a torch. So I tried heating up that bearing with my torch. If you guys are going to do that, just be careful. You don't want to burn this rubber piece here. Tried heating that up. That wasn't really doing much. Just kept trying to hit on the CV axle here with my chisel and my hammer. Kept trying that. Still was not budging. I sprayed WD-40 in there, soaked that in WD-40, let that sit. Still didn't seem to do much. So I finally pulled out my air hammer with a chisel on here. So I went on the back side here and just was trying to chisel where that bearing is. And that wasn't really doing much either. And that's where these pieces come into play. These are the pieces that go inside there. But as I was using my air chisel, it was starting to destroy these, so eventually these just kind of broke away here. So I went ahead and jacked it up even more just so I can have a little more room under here, and just really started pounding on the CV axle here where that snap ring is. And as I was doing that, the whole axle kind of fell out. So this boot is just soaked in oil because this car does have an oil leak there at the timing cover. So this boot was just soaked in oil, and the vibration of me hitting on that CV axle, this eventually this boot just kind of slid off and the whole axle just kind of fell down. So there's what that looks like. But the other half of that where the boot goes onto is still sitting in here, and then of course the axle. So I just started beating on this as hard as I can, and eventually I got some movement. So I think that bearing is starting to slide out a little bit here. So let me reposition my camera. We'll see if we can get that out the rest of the way, but I just kind of wanted to show you guys what I ended up having to do. The other thing I was going to do is
if I got no movement out of that bearing and I knew this wasn't going to slide out, I was going to try to take off that whole bracket here. So if I could take off that whole bracket and then get the CV axle out and then get that in my bench vise and then maybe get that bearing out. But I think I'm making headway now. So let me reposition my camera and I'll show you. So if you notice up here, you can see that's where the CV boot attached to, and you can see just, like I said, the whole axle just kind of fell off and fell out of there. So just this half of the axle is still inside the transmission, but what I'm going to do is still get my chisel here and then with my hammer, and I'll start pounding outward on that, and hopefully this will come out of here. All right, so let's see if we can get this out now. So like I said, I'm just getting on the part of the CV axle there, and I'll try and tap on this some more. There we go. You can see it starting to separate right there. So finally, this is coming out of here. There we go. And you can see not really any transmission fluid came out of there. But man, that is a pain in the butt to do, guys. So I just want to let you guys know that before you get started on this project, that this bearing can seize in there pretty easily. Okay, so I'll go ahead and pull what's left of my CV axle out of here. So pull that through there. And then you can just see, zoom in here, you can just see all the rust, and that's where that bearing seizes inside of this bracket here. So I'm going to clean that up really good too before we stick our new one in there. So let's take a look at our old axle and compare it to our new CV axle. So the old one, I just want to show you guys a closer look, but there is that bearing that got seized in there. You can see the only spot where it wasn't seized was where that bolt kind of screws into right there. But yeah, that's just a pain in the butt to do. And then the new CV axle isn't going to come with this clip, so we will need to pull this off so you can just kind of get on it and just pull on it. We will be reusing this snap ring here. And there's a closer look. You can see where it just kind of separated out of here. Like I said, I was just hitting on that, and then this boot was so saturated in oil and grease that it just kind of fell out of there. So there's that. And if you look at the new CV axle here, again, went with the Cardone. That's going to be part number 66-5305. Also got this off Amazon. I'll put a link in the description for it. The only difference is it does not have this counterweight like the original one here. It does come with a new axle nut though, so that's good. And there's the new bearing. So let's go ahead and just get this clip on. So you can just go ahead and get this around here. Just kind of pop it over that if you can. So just kind of snap it in there like that. And I'm going to go ahead and clean up where that bearing was really quick, and then we can go ahead and throw this in. So as you can see, I went ahead and cleaned up where that bearing's going to go. What I ended up using was just a wire wheel here. And then I also put a really light coat of grease on that as well, just to kind of help that out. And next, I'm just going to use a little dielectric grease here, and I'm going to put just a little dab here, because this is where the transmission output shaft seal is going to be riding. So it's going to be riding right on this part of the axle. So that'll just help a little bit with the seal, reduce the friction. And next I got some of this Toyota ATFWS. I'm just going to kind of pour a little bit on the end here, just to kind of soak the spindle here. Just kind of get it inside the grooves there. just to kind of lubricate that a little bit as we're sticking it in there. Just kind of something like that. Lube it up a little bit here so it's not going in too dry. So go ahead and grab your new axle here, and you want to carefully get this kind of slid in here. Kind of want to support this as best you can as you're trying to work this in here. So you want to get that kind of close, and then I'm going to go down below, make that a little bit easier. So kind of just set this here. I'm going to make sure this ain't going to fall either. See if I can aim this into the transmission from here or not. Okay, so I think I'm back in there. Let's take a look underneath. So then just using both of your hands here, you can have one end on the axle right near the control arm, and you can see we're kind of going in there. Okay, so you may just have to tilt it, turn it a little bit to get it to fit all the way in there, and that slides in there pretty good, just like that. Once you know your axle's all the way in the transmission, let's go ahead and get this C-clip put back into place here. So I'm going to use my long needle nose again here. And let's see if I can get this or not. I'm going to squeeze on that. And then I'm going to use a long flathead screwdriver to kind of help position that where it needs to go. And that didn't work too well. Try this again. It's just really hard to do this while holding the pliers. And that's not working too well. Let me see if I can maybe reach it better from below. Okay, there we go. So I actually ended up using just a flathead screwdriver and a pry bar. Hopefully you guys saw how I did that. So now that's clicked into place. And then you just want to make sure that it's fully in these grooves going around this way. You want to make sure this clip isn't going to fall out of there and it's fully seated in the grooves. And then don't forget to put that 14mm bolt back in there. And it does have this little rubber piece on top, so make sure when you're pulling that off that you don't lose that little rubber piece there. Go ahead and stick that up in there. And we're just going to get this nice and snug is all. Just like that. All right, guys, so I'm going to go ahead and get this side all put back together and buttoned up. I'm not going to record that because it's going to be identical to the other side there. So let me get this back together. Okay, so as you can see, I got the passenger side all put back together. Also got the wheel and tire back on and torqued that down as well. And since no transmission fluid came out of the transmission when we pulled out both axles, we don't need to check that. It should be good. And again, this was a 2010 Lexus RX350. Went ahead and replaced both front CV axles. The driver's side's a piece of cake, guys, as you saw, but on the passenger side, it's a lot more challenging.
And if you can, maybe a few days before you do this job, just go ahead and soak that bearing where it is on the bracket. Soak that in some PB Blast or WD-40 or something like that, and let that sit and soak, because that bearing just pretty much welds itself to that bracket, and it can be a challenge to get out. But as you saw in the video, it is doable. So I'm hoping this video helps you out. If it does, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Got quite a few videos on this car alone, and I'll see you in the next video. I appreciate you watching.